Welcome back. Election results from the north and east indicate a different trend when compared with other parts of the island. The voter turnout in the north was less than 20% and about 50% in the east, in contrast with about 70% in the rest of the country. And unlike in southern districts, it was the opposition candidate who polled the most votes in these areas due to a number of reasons. In our final story this week, we bring you glimpses of voting day in Jaffna, as well as insights into the current context there. Jaffna on election day was a virtual ghost town. Roads were deserted, shops were shut for the day, and there were only a smattering of people to be seen on the streets. In an attempt to urge Tamil voters to cast their ballots, the government had organized a free bus service within the peninsula to take people to their respective polling stations. Yet, the buses stood in their lots, mostly empty and unused. The polling stations themselves were quiet and inactive for the better part of the day.
The general feeling was that they would not probably make much of a difference, considering who the two candidates were, the main candidates for the presidential election. They felt whichever candidate came in, their lot wouldn't be that different. So there was that kind of a disengagement from the whole process. There was a lot of fatigue about engaging into any political process. And people really said, we are tired, let us be, we just want to enjoy a little bit. And we don't want to think of serious things now. Anyway, both candidates are the same. So this kind of a tendency you could see in especially the middle class. When we went around, discussing with various kinds of people, and I suspect that the votes that were really cast were really from the working class and the peasant class, the fishing, and so on.
At 4 p.m., as the ballot boxes were taken away to be counted, it was reported that only 20% of the Jaffna community had voted. In other parts of the north, like Kilinochchi and Mullaitivu, voter turnout was even lower, around 10%. In all these cases, former General Sarath Fonseca received the most votes. To the rest of the country, the low voter turnout in the north came as a surprise. Many later attributed this to the 13 explosions which occurred early on election day between 4 and 6 a.m. Others, however, disagreed.
Well, people say that there were these small incidents of violence which prevented them from voting. I don't really believe that they were really, in fact, contributing to that. And we must not forget that the last municipal council elections in Jaffna were conducted fairly legally. I mean, it was fairly peaceful, and I think it was an exemplary way of conducting elections as far as I know. So, having experienced a peaceful elections like that, they need not have feared these elections. So, my premise is that it's just apathy.
Ms. Sachitanandam's premise seems to be corroborated by the activity in Jaffna the day after elections. Although the government had announced the 27th to be a national holiday, the streets of Jaffna were alive with people going about their daily work. In the run-up to the elections, it was predicted by many political analysts that the minority vote would be the deciding factor in the election results, since the Sinhala vote was split by Sarath Fonseca's candidacy in the presidential elections.
I would say, first of all, that minority votes can influence national elections. It's a bit of a fallacy. Because if you really look at the 2004 general elections, minorities did vote for Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, but yet the UNP lost the elections. So from there you can see how much minority votes can really play a role. And especially in this elections, minorities didn't have votes at all. If you really see, the Vanni population was disenfranchised. I think almost 250,000 people there didn't have real access to their cards, nor the ID cards, polling cards. I mean, they had enough obstacles that would prevent them from casting their votes at these elections. So that, bulk of that vote was now denied. So which kind of minority votes are we talking about? Only thing was that the Muslim and Tamil votes really conquered. They came together in an unprecedented way. I don't think we have seen this kind of a congruence of interest. That was there, but then I would say even then, we don't really matter. And that is an added argument for devolution of power and regional autonomy.
People in Jaffna too agreed with this view and asked for the ability to be able to govern themselves as an autonomous community. The implication was that until they were assured that their requests would be listened to, they would disengage with the country's political process.
The point is that every individual has...
However, Ms. Sachitanandam warned that this political disillusionment, however understandable, could be extremely counterproductive to the cause of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka and expressed the need to persuade them to be more actively involved in the country's political process.
Some of us are really working towards that. That's our job. We work for good governance and people's participation in politics. And so we are really trying to educate the people, whatever the shortcomings are, that they should never disengage. Because that's the only way they can push the space for democracy further and further. You have to elbow, or else it just crumbles on you, like crush you in. So I really hope that in the coming general elections it will be much better, and it will get better and better.
The voting process is the backbone of any democracy. Without freedom of choice, there is very little that we, as the public of our country, can do to determine its fate and also our own. It is this right to choose that we must ensure at all costs in the future. That's all we have time for today. If you have any comments, please write in and tell us. Thanks for watching No War Zone. I'll see you next week.